Hey there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and we are back with an episode of Shadows Over Mordheim, our series of weekly Mordheim battle reports. And this is battle report number 11. It is a surprise attack scenario that is fought between my two friends, Lady Domina, as well as Brother Grimm. Lady Domina is bringing the Untamed Beasts, a Norse Marauder warband, while Brother Grimm is playing the Peeple Eataz of the mob rules. And this one, ladies and gentlemen, is kind of a special battle report, and the reason why is because my two friends, Lady Domina as well as Brother Grimm, are married in real life, so there's a good old-fashioned husband versus wife throwdown. We're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this battle report, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Alright, so let's go and talk about the scenario rules for this one. The scenario for this one is called Surprise Attack. Pretty much what ends up happening is that whoever's got the lowest warband rating gets to choose whether they're the attacker or the defender within this scenario as well. So because of that, my friend Brother Grimm decides to be the attacker, defender on this one, and Lady Domina decides to be the attacker. Pretty much what ends up happening is the defender rolls a d6 for each hero as well as group of henchmen within the warband. On a roll of 1 through 3, they are placed at the side of the table as reinforcements. On a 4 up, however, they're deployed anywhere on the table. However, they must be at least 8 inches away from any table edge, and they must be at least 8 inches away from any other friendly fighter that happens to be on the table as well. And this represents the fact that the defenders are actually like making a screen formation and kind of walking through the ruins looking for any treasure that they can take for themselves. So because of that, they're very much isolated on their own. Meanwhile, the attacker, however, gets an entire warband and they get to deploy 8 inches on a randomly chosen table edge, and of course the attacker also gets the very first turn. Now, from turn 2 onward, the defender rolls a d6 again for the reinforcements. On a 4 up, they basically deploy that person or that hero or that group of henchmen on a random table edge within 8 inches as well. And obviously the last warband standing happens to be the winner on this one. For experience, for anybody who survives this scenario, they get 1 point of experience, as well as 1 point of experience for the winning warband leader for this one. And also, as always, whenever a hero takes on an enemy fighter out of action, they earn 1 point of experience point for each one as well. So, with the experience points, as well as with the scenario rules over with, let's go and talk about the battle plan for this one. So as you can see, my friends are playing on a 4x4 table. My friend Brother Grimm, of course, is deploying them pretty much in the center of the entire battlefield. His fighters are pretty much spread out for the entirety of the ruins as they're going about searching for treasure, while Lady Domina's Untamed Beasts warband is pretty much deployed along the left-hand side of the table for the most part. Pretty much for the scenario rules for this one, I'm not really sure what my friends' battle plan is for the most part, just because I'm the arbitrator in this campaign. So I'm just taking photos of the battle that takes place. You would really have to ask them. Pretty much though, from what I can gather from the scenario rules, my buddy Brother Grimm will have to try to survive as long as he possibly can and just wait for his reinforcements to show up to fight against the Untamed Beasts. The only thing that my buddy Brother Grimm has going for him is he has a very large warband, so he could quickly outnumber the Untamed Beasts if he's really lucky. But for the most part though, he just has to survive until that point. Lady Domina, however, she is as an ended. She has her entire warband and she's taking on a much smaller force that's spread out as well, so she can basically, take him out piecemeal if she gets really lucky on that part as well. So with the battle plan over, let's go talk about deployment real quick. So first of all, let's go talk about the Untamed Beasts, the Norse warband that is played by my friend Lady Domina. Oh, she's deploying on the far left-hand side of the battlefield, so right here on the bottom of the screen is a little 3-man deployment group. Up on the front, that is Muckcat, that is a hunter equipped with shield, twin axes, as well as a bow. Right behind them, of course, is their leader, that is Varel Hearteater, who's a Jarl. He's equipped with helmet, shield, axe, as well as throwing axes. He's got the seaman as well as leader ability as well. And then right next to him, that is Shanked. That is a bondsman who's equipped with shield, great sword, as well as seaman. He's also got a leg wound as well, so he's a little bit slower when it comes to the movement allowance. And that pretty much makes this little 3-man fire team for Lady Domina. In the center of another deployment, she has another 3 fighters as well. Leading that one is, I believe that is Shroya. who is a hunter, is equipped with shield, twin axes, as well as bows. Right behind them, of course, we have Tinian First Fang. He is a beast berserker. He's got shield, a great weapon, he's got throwing axes, he's got the seaman, as well as berserk charge and berserker skills. And then right next to him on the right hand side, that is Cleft Skull. That's a bondsman equipped with a shield as well as a great axe. He's got throwing axes, he's got the seaman ability, as well as the Madness Frenzy special rule attached to him as well. As you see there on the right hand side, that's one of the members of the Eataz, which is actually one of Brother Grimm's goblins that he has for his warband. And finally, on the very top of our deployment zone, up on the top, that is Shuya, which is a hunter who's equipped with shield, twin axes, as well as a bow. It's also got Ugla the Maw, which is a wolfen with horrible scars, fear, bestial, as well as blinded special rules. And behind them is Mayim Beastspeaker. She's a berserker who's armed with shield, flail, throwing axes. She's got the seaman as well as the berserker skill as well. And that pretty much makes it Lady Domina's deployment on this one. And then, of course, right next to them on the right-hand side, that's another member of the Eataz, a member of Warlord of my buddy Brother Grimm's warband. So, scattered out about the rest of the battlefield, about at least 8 inches away from any friendly fighters, are the Peeple Eataz. Up in the center there, that's Burps of Blood, which is an ogre bodyguard. He's got great weapon, light armor, as well as the fear and large skill. And then finally, on the left hand, on the bottom there, we got 3 cave squigs. They don't have new names; they're just 3 nameless cave squigs, which is really bad for these guys because they're not within 6 inches of a minder. So, because of that, these guys will just randomly travel 2d 6 inches in any direction, which could prove kind of bad because these cave squigs attack anything they bump into. So, that's also a bad thing for them as well. So Brother Grimm has a lot to worry about on this one. Meanwhile, on the top is the plum area. He basically has another Luda, as well as 2 members of his Orc War Boys. Those guys are called the War Boys. Their 2 Orc Boys are equipped with shields, swords, bows, and also have the Animosity special rule as well. And that pretty much makes it my buddy Brother Grimm's deployment for this one. So with deployment over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and both Lady Domina and Brother Grimm roll off for initiative to see who will be going first. So that goes directly to the top of turn number 1, and the Norse Marauders get to go first, because I forgot, attackers always get to go first on this scenario as well. And as you can see in this photo, for the most part, Lady Domina starts taking the offensive. First of all, she charges in her 3 fireman teams on the top as well as middle of the deployment zones. They go charging directly into the Eataz, which is the goblin fighters they're taking on respectively. At the same time, she also just moves up the rest of her warband normally, so that way they can open fire with their bows as well as their throwing axes at the various squigs as well as goblins on the left-hand side of the battlefield. And that pretty much makes up her movement phase for the most part. So here's a close-up of a couple of our fighters here in the bottom of the screen, getting ready to do some long-range shooting with throwing axes as well as bows directly into that blue cave squig there on the right-hand side. And here's a close-up of her 2 of her fighters going directly into one of the Eataz as well, in order to fight that guy in close combat, 2-to-1 odds. And exactly the same thing happens here with Mayim Beastspeaker going directly into the Luda as well as one of the hunters as well. However, probably the most dramatic of all the movements though was with Ugla the Maw. Basically, he charges for 12 inches directly into the Warboy, who's standing in the shadow of the watchtower there in the middle of the battlefield. So with the movement phase over with, we skip shooting because unfortunately Lady Domina's shooting was pretty much ineffective during the shooting phase, and we go directly to the combat phase. So in the combat phase, needless to say, they basically had no problem taking out that Night Goblin. If I remember correctly, I believe the Hunter managed to put a knocked out result on him, while the other bondsman, Cleft Skull, though, managed to finish him off with the coup de grace, putting that Night Goblin directly out of action. At the same time, earning himself a bonus experience point for taking an enemy fighter out of action. And exactly the same thing ends up happening up here at the top of the screen. Shroya manages to basically put a knocked out result on the Night Goblin, and it was Mayim Beastspeaker who managed to finish off that Night Goblin with the coup de grace, also earning herself an additional experience point as well, and putting that fighter out of action. Meanwhile, in the center of the battlefield here, Ugla the Maw, of course, attacked the Warboy, managed to put a knocked out result on him when it was all said and done. So unfortunately for Lady Domina, she did not take that fighter out of action. However, during the next recovery phase, he's pretty much at her mercy, and she could kind of finish him off. And, that'd be, 3 less orcs and goblins left on the battlefield. So with that, we go directly to the bottom of turn number 1 for the mob rules on this one, and as you can see in this photo, Brother Grimm starts taking the offensive, try to take the offensive anyways as best as he can. First of all, he runs over the last member of the War Boys as well as one of his Ludas over to the left-hand side to the shadow of the tower there in order to start engaging close combat. At the same time, the Ogre Burps of Blood charges directly into Ugla the Maw, catching him in direct combat. So because of that Wolfen will now have to fight against an Ogre Bodyguard. Now, for his 3 Cave Squigs, they pretty much, have the random movement ability, which means they roll 2d6 as well as a scatter die to see exactly where they're going. Fortunately for Brother Grimm, the pink as well as the blue Cave Squigs start moving to the left-hand side, while the yellow one just kind of bouncing along happily, heading directly to the town center for the most part. And that pretty much makes it the move phase for Brother Grimm. It should also be mentioned as well that he also passes route test during the recovery phase, no problem. So with the move phase over with, let's go and talk about the rest of the turn. So here's a close-up of the blue cave squig hopping his way merrily directly towards the Norse Marauders, and once again his movement is completely random. We're not really sure where he'll go next turn, but whatever he bumps into, of course, he automatically engages in close combat. And here's a close-up of the pink cave squig making his way merrily along, trying to get closer to the Norse warband, but then again, like I said, we really don't know where he's going next turn because all random is movement for these guys. And here's a close-up of the yellow cave squig just hopping along merrily, minding his own business, going to the middle of town. And finally, of course, here's a close-up of the Warboy trying to catch up as quickly as he can to help out his friend. At the same time, you can see Burps of Blood charge directly into Ugla the Maw, as well as the last looters, just moving up his normal allowance so that way he can shoot. Now, we skipped the shooting phase, unfortunately, because the Orc Warboy ran, so he can't shoot, and the looter missed his shots. So because of that, we go directly to close combat. And in the combat phase, it was really bad. What ended up happening is that Burps of Blood managed to put out of action Ugla the Maw, managed to take that guy down, stoving his head in with his great weapon is all said and done. Ugla the Maw, of course, did try to counterattack, but effectively his attacks were ineffective against Burps of Blood, and then Burps of Blood, of course, struck with his great weapons, and it was just all said and done. It was pretty much, over with. Ugla the Maw, of course, does suffer a smashed leg injury, so because of that, he will miss out his next game, as he, of course, takes time in order to recover. As you can see here, Burps of Blood, of course, also follows through, and directly to the rest of the Norse Marauders from the Untamed Beasts in order to fight them off as well. And that pretty much ends turn number 1 on this one. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Norse Marauders on this one, and once again, Lady Domina decides to take the offensive on this one. She charges in one of their berserkers as well as one of her hunters directly into, or not a berserker, one of her bondsmen as well as one of her hunters go directly into the blue cave squig, engaging that guy in close combat as well. At the same time, she also moves up her leader as well as her berserker, that is Varel Hearteater as well as Tinyat Firstfang. They run up their maximum of 8 inches to the top of the battlefield in order to help out her fighters up there deal with the ogre. At the same time, she also charges in Mayam Beast Speaker as well as Shroya the Hunter. They go directly into Burps of Blood in order to engage that guy in close combat as well. And that pretty much makes it the move phase for this one. So here's a close-up of Cleft Skull. That is the, sorry, not Cleft Skull, Shankt is his name. That's the bondsman armor, the Great Sword, as well as the hunter, what's his name, a cat going directly into the blue cave squig and engaging that guy in close combat. And here's a close-up of Varel Hearteater as well as Tinyat Firstfang as well as Cleft Skull moving as quickly as they can up to the top of the screen or to help out the rest of the warband who are fighting the ogre. And here's a close-up of Mayam Beast Speaker as well as Shroya, currently engaged with Burps of Blood, the ogre bodyguard. So with the move phase over with, we skip the shooting phase because everybody's engaged in close combat or they have ran, and so because of that we go directly to the combat phase. And once again in the combat phase, the blue cave squig is taken out of action. This time around, however, it was the hunter that managed to do that. So because of that, the cave squig will need to make an injury roll to see exactly if it recovers or not for the next game. At the same time, Mayam Beast Speaker managed to put off the last wound directly onto him as well. Managed to cause enough injuries in order to kill that guy right off the bat, which is all kinds of awesome for Lady Domina on that part as well. The two hunters, Shroya and Shroya, were able to actually cause enough injuries on that guy to drop him down to his last wound. And it was basically Mayam using her frenzy ability with her flail that was able to put the fast killing blow on that guy. So because of that, Burps of Blood goes crashing down face ground on the ground, and he is now currently dead. Alright, so that takes directly to the top of turn number 2 for the mob rules on this one. So the Orcs and Goblins get to go next, and the first thing that Brother Grimm does, of course, he rolls off for his reinforcements that show up. And luckily for him, 3 reinforcements show up. 2 of his biggins, Ugla the Blade, as well as Zappa the Snappa, they both show up on the battlefield, on the left-hand side of the battlefield, no less. And they decide to charge directly into Cleft Skull, as well as into a cat, to engage those guys in close combat. At the same time, the Shroomhead also shows up on the table as well, and that warrior is equipped with Madcap Mushrooms, so he downs the Madcap Mushrooms and charges directly into, I believe it is Tinyat Beast Speaker's his name, engaging that guy in close combat with that huge ball and chain as well. At the same time, the Warboy also charges directly into the close combat, the Shadow of the Tower. At the same time, the second Warboy manages to flip over because now he's stunned. He's no longer knocked out as well. So here's a close of Ugla the Blade as well as Zappa Snappa. Sorry, not Zappa the Snappa. Sorry, that's Baron Samedi, the Orc Shaman. They basically go charging into their respective targets and start engaging those guys in close combat. And finally, here's a close-up of the Shroomhead going directly into Varel Hearteater, the warband leader, the Jarl of this warband, and engages him in close combat as well. And here's a close-up of the 2 Warboys charging directly into close combat against the rest of the Norse warband, with the Ludo following in tow, fighting against another hunter as well. And that pretty much makes the move phase for this one. So during the shooting phase, Baron Zamidi basically decides to cast a spell called Club. I managed to get that spell off, which means that he has 2 strength, as well as 2 attack until he actually suffers his first wound. So because of that, he is even super deadly in close combat, which is good for him because he's basically taking on a bondsman in close combat as well. So during the combat phase, Ugla the Blade managed to put a stun result directly onto a cat, so because of that, the hunter goes crashing down to the ground face up because he is currently stunned. He'll be able to get back on his feet again during the next recovery phase, and that'll basically save him. However, for the other guy, Shank, though, not so lucky on that time. Basically, he just kind of goes crashing down face ground to ground with a knocked out result, which means he's completely at the mercy of Baron Zamidi if he decides to kind of finish him off in the next round as well. And meanwhile, the combat between the Shroomhead as well as Veril, the Heart Eater, did not go according to plan. Basically managed to put a out of action result directly onto Veril Heart Eater. Managed to get, I think, a 6 on one of his critical injury hits on that one. I think he managed to cause twice as much damage as what he did to him. So because of that, when they roll up on the injury table, Veril Heart Eater rolled a deep wound. So because of that, he will miss out his next game because he's too busy getting recovery. Meanwhile, in the melee at the top of the battlefield, nothing much really happens between these two forces as they're currently engaged in close combat, and they were pretty much combat effective against each other. One able to hit or unable to wound one another, so they're still basically just fighting it out there in a massive brawl. And that pretty much makes the turn for the mob rules. So with that, we go directly to the top of turn number 3 for the Norse Marauders, and this photo is taken after the move phase as well as the recovery phase. And the recovery phase, I believe his name is Macat, managed to get back on his feet again, so he's currently engaged in close combat with Ugla the Blade. At the same time, Shanked, he actually managed to flip over as well with a stun result, so that way he's not that vulnerable going up against Baron Zamidi. While that's occurring, of course, Tenyot First Fang, the Berserker, who's in the middle of the battlefield, charged directly into the Shroomhead and managed to take on that Fanatic head on. And once again, the combat at the very top of the screen between the different hunters as well as the berserkers against the war boys as well as Luda is still continuing on in the shadow of that watchtower there on the top of the screen. So here's a close-up of Macat getting back on his feet again, fighting against Ugla the Blade, and at the same time you can see that Shank there is slowly turning around in order to face off against Baron Zamidi. So he is still stunned, so he is kind of vulnerable because all Baron Zamidi has to do is wound him to finish him off, but at the same time though, he has to make that wound roll, he doesn't get it automatically, and of course he could fail it if he's not lucky. And here's a close-up, of course, of the move phase between Tenyot First Fang going against the Shroomhead and engaging him in close combat as well in order to fight that guy, and hopefully can cause a hurting for that guy for, putting his leader out of action. And finally, here's a close of the all-out brawl between the War Boys as well as the Luda against Bondsman as well as Berserker and 2 different hunters. So with the move phase over with, we skip the shooting phase because everyone's engaged in close combat, and we go directly to the combat phase. And once again, during the combat phase, things did not go according to plan for the most part. Ugla the Blade was able to finally put a knocked out result onto Macat, so because of that, the hunter goes crashing face down to the ground. He's currently bleeding out. At the same time, Baron Zamidi failed to wound Shanked, so because of that, Shanked is completely fine, factoring his next recovery phase and get back on his feet again and actually do some fighting if he's actually lucky enough. So things are looking pretty up for Brother Grimm here, for Lady Domina here on the bottom of the battlefield. However, what was not so great is that the Shroomhead was able to put a knocked out result directly onto Tenyot First Fang. So because of that, that Berserker goes crashing face down to the ground, and he is currently bleeding out at the feet of the Fanatic. And that's because, as you've seen in other battle reports, this Berserker has not learned that you do not charge against Fanatics if you don't have to. Meanwhile, combat appeared on the top of the board. Actually, the stalemate is broken for the most part. I believe it was Clefskull that managed to put the out-of-action result on one of the War Boys, so because of that, he goes immediately out of action as well. And I believe that Shuya, she actually suffers a stun result, while the other looter suffers a knocked-out result as well. So combat is starting to slowly change over to the Norse Marauders side on this part, and that pretty much makes it the turn for them. Alright, so that takes directly to the top at turn number 3 for the mob rules in this one, and this photo is taken after the recovery phase as well as the move phase. During the recovery phase, 2 more members of the mob rules actually show up on this one. Papa Shango as well as Stabba. These are Goblin Ore Warriors armed with a Squid Prodder. They show up on the bottom left-hand corner of the table. So the first thing that ends up happening is that Papa Shango runs up as quickly as he can past Baron Zamidi in order to engage the Berserkers as well as the fires on the top of the screen. And at the same time, Stabba also runs up forward in order to capture the pink cave squig and actually direct him the correct action this time, because now he has a quick spotter to just kind of move him along as well. Everybody else is currently engaged in close combat, so they say exactly where they're located at. So here's a close-up of Stabba wrangling in the pink cave squig and making his way northwards in order to fight the rest of the Norse Marauders of the Untamed Beasts. And here's a close-up of Baron Zamidi as well as Ugla the Blade, still currently engaged in their close combat against their enemies. At the same time, you can see Papa Shango running as quickly as he possibly can, heading towards the top of the screen. And here's a close-up of the Shroomhead, currently engaged with Tinyet First Fang, engaging him in close combat still, getting ready to finish him off with the Crew de Gras. And finally, here's a close-up of the Warboy, just all by himself, facing off against 3 members of the Untamed Beasts, because the Luda right there next to him, he is currently knocked out at this point. So with the move phase over with, we skip shooting phase because everybody ran or is engaged in close combat, and we go directly to the combat phase. And as you see in the combat battle report right here, nothing really good pretty much happens for the most part for Lady Dama anyways. A cat is taken directly out of action, so he'll need to roll up at the end of the battlefield to see exactly what happens to him. At the same time, Baron Zemidio has actually put the finishing blow directly onto Shanked as well, taking him out of action. Luckily for Lady Dama though, however, Shanked makes a full recovery, so because of that, no harm, no foul there, and he is perfectly fine. However, what is not so great, however, is that the Shroomhead managed to take Tinyet First Fang out of action by just kind of clobbing him right in the head with his ball and chain. In the end, he suffered a leg wound on that one as well, so because that Tinyet First Fang loses 1 to his movement, so now he's only movement 3 at this point. And once again, at the top of the screen, another stalemate breaks out as the Warboy is unable to cause any injury, and same thing with these rest of these Norse Marauders, unable to hurt the Luda or able to hurt the Warboy in return. So because of that, we go directly to the next turn for the Norse Warband. However, it's this point of the battlefield that my friend Lady Dama decides to call the game at this point. She really doesn't want to lose any more fighters than she already has, so basically she ends up surrendering and just kind of retreating out the battlefield for the most part, netting another victory for Brother Grimm, as well as the mob rules of the Peeple Eataz. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this battle report is now officially over, and we'll go directly to the post game.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
So first of all, let's go and talk about the Untamed Beasts real quick. So Lady Dama unfortunately suffered 4 injuries on this one. Feral Art Eater suffered a deep wound, so because of that he will miss his next game. Tainted the First Fang, the Berserker, suffered a leg wound, so he has -1 to his movement. Ugla the Moss suffered a smashed leg result, so because of that he will also miss out on his next game as well. And then finally Shanked made a full recovery, no problems whatsoever. For advancements, 4 members of the Untamed Beasts advanced upwards. Mayim Beastbreaker, she earned +1 to her attacks. Ugla the Maw earned the Sprint skill, which is kind of ironic since he suffered a leg wound. Shanked as well as Cleft Skull. Shanked actually leveled up twice on this one, earning +1 to his initiative as well as learning the Berserker Charge skill, and same thing with Cleft Skull, who will also learn the Berserker Charge skill on this one. During the exploration phase, they managed to find 3 shards of weird stone worth 65 gold pieces. With those 65 gold pieces, they recruited 2 new hunters named Kairaz as well as Nightbraid. Kairaz is armed with a bow as well as his dagger, and Nightbraid is armed with a javelin as well as an axe and dagger. Their current record now is at 1 win as well as 2 losses, and Lady Dama's warband rating now is at 139 points. So we go directly to the Peeple Eataz, and for the injury, all the henchmen within his warband actually made full recoveries, and the Shroomhead, who has to roll up in the serious injury table to see what happens to him because of the Madcap Mushroom rules, actually got a full recovery, so he's perfectly fine as well. For their advancements, 2 members of the warband actually advanced. Stabba earned +1 attack, so because then he has now 2 attacks with his quick prodder, and the Shroomhead actually leveled up as well, earning +1 to his strength, so now he's swinging that ball and chain at strength 6 now, which makes him even deadlier. During exploration, they found 3 shards of Weirdstone worth 50 gold pieces, and during their exploration they managed to find a shop, and inside that shop they found a lucky charm. With their money, they basically rehired Burpso Blood by paying his upkeep costs, and they also took the 20 remaining credits they left over and put it directly into their treasury. The current record for the warband is now at 2 wins and 1 loss, and Brother Grimm's current warband rating is at 199 points. So that's good to do for this week, guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest greatest hobby news related to this channel. That's good to do for this one, you guys. We'll catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.